Yeah, I mean, it was a very political time, and I think it was a time when young people also were very, very political and wanted to get involved.
Let me take you back to 1990. What I want to do is fact check a story, because the story that I've heard is that before Life is Sweet became Life is Sweet, when it was just the next project you were going to do, and I think Alison was in the cast at that point and Jim Broadbent was in the cast, but you hadn't gone any further. There was a conversation with the producer who thought that this was the moment that you might want to broaden your horizons in terms of actors, and suggested that you could and should now be working with, I think I'm right in thinking, Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep and Robert De Niro. So is this story true? Because you have been credited.
It is true, but I don't think those are the right actors that were talked about. But I don't think it makes any difference at this stage of the proceedings, because they were not going to be the actors who were going to have anything to do with this. They were, and that's all there is to it.
I mean, Alison, let me bring you in at that point, because I mean, obviously, by this stage, you'd worked with Mike on a number of projects. You know, you were very versed in that famous Mike Leigh method, you know, of rehearsal and research. Did it feel in any way different this time? Did it feel distinct? Because Wendy is such a rich and complex character, and I just wonder was this just at that point the next Mike Leigh film, or was there something in the air with this one?
Well, I'd no idea, because when you commit yourself to working with Mike, you've initially no idea what you're going to do. I mean, as it turned out, Wendy is probably one of the nicest characters I've ever played. You know, she is a very warm, loving woman. I mean, most of the others are sort of kind of monsters in their own way, and not very nice women. So it was nice to make a family, wasn't it, Jane?
Yes.
It was lovely to be a family with Jim and Claire and Jane, and to have that unit, albeit with a few conflicts, but that, as families do. But yeah, I'd no idea what we were going to develop.
I mean, Jane, I wanted to get your take on that experience, because obviously for you this was the first time working with Mike. And I think when people think of Life is Sweet, they think of it as being sweeter actually than it is, and cosier than it is. And obviously there is a darkness there, and in your character, Nicola in particular, there is always this darkness and this tragedy, really. So I wondered how you, in terms of developing that character, then that kind of slightly tortured aspect that you have to embody, how was that experience?
Well, I think that I was just saying that I've got a daughter now who's 18, and it feels very resonant watching it now, because it's that sort of endless search to find out who you are as a person, as a teenager, and I think that was what we were trying to search for Nicola, who she was, and it does feel very, very poignant now, having a daughter of a similar age.
We spoke earlier, Mike, about the fact that Q&As can often be sort of slightly deathly when the person on stage just dominates. So I do actually want to hand over probably quicker than usual. The one thing I wanted to mention just before that was again about the filming, whether it feels, when I watched Life is Sweet again recently, it felt like there was something in the air, kind of culturally and politically, and I don't know if I'm remembering that right. And then I sort of went back and thought, I tell you what it was. I realised Thatcher went the week after your film came out, and so I just wondered, it felt like 1990 actually, with hindsight, was this quite interesting moment? Was any of that stuff in the air when you were making the film, or are you just thinking, okay, it's the family, it's the house?
Well, the poll tax riots.
Right.
Your T-shirt, right. Brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very political time, and I think it was a time when young people also were very, very political and wanted to get involved. I mean, that's the sadness about Nicola, is that she didn't, but actually people around her were very much getting involved.
I do feel, actually, it's funny you just say that, because I think you should be able to feel after the catharsis, when they've got through it together, and there's a positive feeling at the end of the film, that she may possibly be able to, having got over the rubbish, to actually focus on what she really naturally, instinctively believes in, and go out there and do it. Really. I think I hope that's a possibility that you, the audience, can feel at the end of the film, amongst other things. Though nothing's quite black and white, but I would hope that that optimism is about that as much as a number of other things.
Yeah. Well, it's a very optimistic film, isn't it? I mean, that's the wonderful thing about it. It is, as Alison said, it's so warm, the characters are so warm, and there is a feeling that, you know, things could change and shift. I mean, it's full of optimism, is the film. I think that's what's so glorious about it.
I don't know whether you remember this incident, probably do. We went to New York with the film, and there was a screening with this very kind of elite New York, very she audience, and no one sort of under the age of 60. And they were all sitting there, and we sort of came in at the back at one point, and this woman sort of said, can you understand a word they're saying? And so we thought, oh my God.
People were walking out, weren't they?
You know, they were walking out. Anyway, so we went on stage for the Q&A. We were sitting there, and they were all kind of sitting there like that, you know, very judgmental. And then this woman said, after a bit, this woman put her hand up and she said, I just want to say something to you, Mike Leigh. And we went, what is this? You know, and she said, how dare you use that poor, sick girl in your film? How dare you? And we're kind of going, what? She was going on and on. And Mike was just sitting up saying, and in the end I thought, I've had enough of this. And I just said, please, I said, this is a film we have spent 6 months of our lives on. Jane Horrocks is a very talented actress. Quite well, she's not bulimic. She was acting, and I was going to off on this thing. And this woman was truly believing that Mike had exploited this poor sick girl. I just couldn't believe it. Well, it was a sort of praise to you. It actually was so convincing. But this lot, they just didn't get it. And then one woman said to me, and you at first, oh, you were so sweet and lovely dancing around with all those little children. And I thought, oh, what a lovely film this is going to be. And then we got all that shit and all that. Forget it.
Well, I don't know the answer to that really, but I think it would be only proper to say that no doubt the reason why the BFI is putting it out on DVD and Blu-ray is precisely to correct that. You know, there are a lot of films, and there's a huge variety, and so much is available. So I never really feel that one can really legitimately complain about that. I mean, this film has some people know it, but again, you know, here's a revival, so that's as much as one can say. As to the other thing you said, which is to do with its influence, I mean, I do know the late and lamented Caroline Aherne absolutely paid respect to what this film and a number of other things that I've been involved in as an influence, and I was always very flattered by that, because I was a huge fan of what I insist on calling the royal family, not the royal family, by the way. So I was always very touched by that.
It sort of strikes me that The Royal Family was another one of those shows which actually it was kind of all about the female characters. And again, it feels like Life is Sweet is a film which actually, clearly there are fascinating male characters as well, but it's about the women, and it's also about the relationship between your two characters. And it feels like the pivotal scene is, we love you, you stupid girl. So it's almost like the weight is kind of on the pair of you. And it's a good weight, and that's not a bad thing.
It's about women, it's about men. You know, people say this sometimes about things of mine, that this is about, well, of course it is, but the role of the men and the way the men are is very much an integral part of the thing. I don't know that you can quite separate it out, really. I think it's about relationships. No, I mean, the first thing, without going into all the famous details about it, is that, like all of my films, we collaborated over a long period to invent and explore and bring into existence the world of the characters. So when Alison said she didn't know what it was going to be, that's that everybody started off joining without having any idea what the characters would be, and we created the characters and made it all up. As to the question of there being twins, it occurred to me, I already knew Jane, and then when I met Claire Skinner, it immediately occurred to me that she and Jane could just look like sisters. And then we started working on it. It wasn't till just a short distance into the work that I suddenly had this eureka moment. I thought, actually, they could be twins. And so with a little bit of jiggery-pokery and specs being worn and hair being dyed and so on and so forth, they are plausible twins. But the idea didn't actually come to me until we'd just begun to work on it. I don't know whether you remember that.
No, I didn't know. I thought you'd always envisaged that we were
sisters,
twins.
yes.
You're finding out a lot tonight.
That's not all. Well, this is Rachel Portman, who's gone on to be one of our great film composers. I had worked with her previously a couple of times. And, you know, I think the thing about, certainly so far as I'm concerned, working with the kind of composers that I like to work with, they're the composers, and Rachel is no exception, who start not from a kind of notional or intellectual or fancy set of ideas, but from an emotional response to the film. And that's what this score comes from. And so, yeah, I think it is on a, I hope it's integral to the way the film feels and looks. The look of the film is important because for two specific reasons. One is that this was the first film that I made that was shot by the cinematographer Dick Pope, who has actually shot everything I've done ever since 1990, right down to the film we've just shot. And also, interestingly, this was the first of 3 films, of which the second was Secrets and Lies and the third was Naked, that were designed by the distinguished theatre and opera designer Alison Chitty. These are the only 3 films she ever worked on, because for various reasons decided that she preferred doing theatre and opera, and indeed she's done all my stage work since. But her very special aesthetic and eye very much informs the mood and the atmosphere and the texture and the colour of the film, along with Dick Pope's cinematography and Rachel's score. So it is a film that you're saying, and I appreciate this, where we do feel that it's homogenous in that sense, and organic.
I wanted to ask about the house specifically, in fact, actually, because it often feels like the house is another character in the film, and it's one of those kind of key details that if it was the wrong house, people would notice immediately, and it would set the whole film off on the wrong tack, whereas actually it's exactly the right house. And Jane, obviously, I mean, clearly you spent every scene is in the house. Nicola is a shut-in. So I mean, I wonder how you felt your relationship with that space, because it's a very confined space. You know, you're stuck there the whole time.
And I think the wonderful thing about working with Mike is that you actually create the space as the characters. So Alison would have created that home as Wendy, and so that's why it feels so organic.
But by that, you kind of mean, don't you, that the input from the family characters with the designer, and so that everything's...
Yes, yeah, exactly. So there's very much an input from the actors.
I think I would want to say about that I don't know whether this is interesting or not, but people always talk about my films about character and so on, which is true, of course, about people. But from as far as I'm concerned, my films are always about place and the nature of... I mean, you were talking about Naked before we came in, and I mean, it's about people in the environment, and the environment is as much, as you say, a character as anything else. And I mean, here is probably one of the most boring kind of human environments, living environments, that anyone's ever designed, the house in this. I mean, it's very, very functional, but it has its own personality, which is what you're saying. And it becomes very specific by integrating the characters with the place and taking it over and inhabiting it. It's clear, I think, that Wendy and Andy have done their best, have been positive parents. It happens, does it not, that with the best will in the world, some kids are trouble. And you don't know why and where it comes from. I think the important aspect of that in relation to the film and what happens in the film is that a way is found to connect, which is, you know, more of the parents, in this case Wendy, really pushing it to go as far as she can to deal with it. To be honest, I don't know what you would say, but it has never occurred to me until you asked the question at this moment that we might have even considered in any shape or form attributing the cause, palpably or explicitly, attributing the cause of Nicola's problem condition to anything in particular, other than that it's implicit that she's obviously withdrawn from the world. She's become isolated, as some teenagers and in this case late teenagers do.
The other story that I wanted to check, because it's too good not to be true, is that the menu at Aubrey's restaurant, those dishes were, you did check that everything up to and including liver in lager was technically feasible.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Spall and I sat down one evening and invented a whole lot of dishes, ridiculous dishes, we thought. We then got one of those clever people who cooks for film props and things, and she tested every single one of those recipes, and the ones that weren't feasible we threw out. So all the ones that are in are totally feasible.
Pork cyst.
But pork cyst, no, pork cyst is an actual classic dish. And it's actually, I found it in we had it when we were married. We had a.
What? We had pork cyst?
You did say you'd find something else.
I had the pork. I had the pork. You had the cyst. No, we had a cookery book, which I think I've still got actually, which was of classic 18th century recipes. And pork cyst, CYST, is an actual classic English recipe. So that's the only one that's a real recipe we didn't invent.